All right. Day 3 of 6-2. You may remember that the directions on your assignment a few days ago had the words phase shift involved. And I told you not to do it because you didn't know how to do it yet. Now here is how the book teaches it. They basically want you to have it in this form, and then they tell you to take the opposite of C over K and do all that work. That's not how I teach it. The phase shift, though, what it really is, just so you know, and then I'll show you how I do it. The phase shift is basically how far to the right or left are you going to move that graph. Basically, you just leave the axes where it is, you grab the graph itself, pick it up, move it over, and put it back down. You leave the axes where they are, though, so you just push it to the right, push it to the left, but you don't move where the x and y axis are. Okay, so it's kind of like the translations we did before when we were moving the graphs up 2, right 3. It's kind of like that. You're just moving it one way or the other. It does get a little harder to graph it, but we're going to take that step by step. So let's see how I would do it. Well, what I do, if you remember, I told you that whenever you get your angle given to you like that, that entire thing in parentheses there is the angle before you take tangent, correct? What I tell you to do is make sure that any numbers that happen to be on that angle, for example, there's a 1 there, right? That's what you want, is a 1 there. Any other numbers better be out front. Remember I told you to factor that out? It was going to save you time later. Here's why it saves you time. If you have it, for example, in this setup, to find phase shift, all you have to do is take the opposite of that number. So the phase shift is a positive 45 degrees. I should have a degree symbol on there, sorry. That means you're going to take that graph of tangent, if I were to graph this one right now, and you're going to push it 45 degrees to the right. Do you think that's also going to move the asymptotes in that graph? If you're pushing everything to the right? Yeah, everything's just going to slide over to the right 45 degrees. Now, how about this one over here, letter B? Is that in the form that I suggest you have it in? No, because what's not where it's supposed to be? The 2, but you got to do it properly. So, does the 2 go now? Should I write it down right now? Should it go out front like this? Is that where the 2 should go? No, that's not where the 2 should go. You write down sign, and then you put the 2, and then you put the angle. Now be very careful, though. What would actually be in there for that angle then? X plus 90. You see, you'd have to remember that formula to do it that way. Does it end up being the same answer? Yes, it does. So if you like that opposite of C over K, you go ahead and use that. It's going to end up being the same answer. But if you look now, all you got to do is take the opposite of that number. Negative 90, which means what? I'm going to have to move it left 90 degrees. Okay? And just for fun, let's just have a quick review here. And let's figure out amplitude and period for both of these. Letter A, amplitude. Aha, not applicable, gotcha. It's tangent. And period. Well, what's the normal period for tangent?
180.
And what's really out front there is a 1, and so 180 divided by 1 is 180 degrees. How about on this one here, amplitude is 1. Yes, I haven't put anything out front. So what's that 2 do then?
Divide that by
Right, your normal period is what for sine? 360, and then you take it and divide it by that 2, and so my new period is 180. So this one actually has a lot happening to it. The amplitude did stay the same. The period would only be 180 now, but then we are going to shift it left 90 degrees. So you can see how that does complicate the graphs a little bit, which is why I start the graphs with just amplitude and period, because let's face it, that really wasn't that hard to do amplitude and period if you follow my 2 suggestions. And then what we're going to have to do eventually is just slide that graph over. Okay? Once again, you could look at this many different ways if you want, but my way is easier. Right? It says determine the possible equations of cosine that has amplitude 3, period 90, and phase shift 45. So what I've done now is instead of asking you to find those 3 things, I've given you those 3 things, and I want the equations that could possibly be that. Now I do say equations, so what better be in your answer somewhere? An equal sign. And I asked you equations of cosine, so you better have an equal sign and a cosine somewhere in this problem, correct? So let's start with our equals, and let's just put y equals. That'll be easy enough. We know there will be some kind of cosine involved. You notice how I left myself some room. Why would I want to leave myself some room? Yes? Yeah, exactly. There's an amplitude other than 1, right? So there's an amplitude of 3. Okay. So what should I probably put out front? A 3. going to leave some room again, and over here I'm going to put my angle. Now my angle could just be theta or x or whatever variable you like, but I'm telling you that the phase shift should be 45. I think that's a pretty easy one to do right now if you follow my suggestions. Let's just put our theta in there. I need the phase shift to be a positive 45 degrees. Put negative 45 degrees in. So do you see how my way is way easier than all of this stuff? It's like, what's going on? It's like, I don't even understand what that's saying. Now the only thing that I have to figure out is, do I have to put anything there or not? And what you have to do is figure out, well, what do I have to put there? And here's how I do that. I figure out, well, cosine, what is the normal period for cosine? 360. Now that is called k, so if you want to write it, that's fine. And it better equal what when I'm done in this problem? Better equal 90. So is that something you could solve? Most definitely. If you had to, I think most of you know this is 4. But what if the problem was a little bit more complicated and you couldn't tell right away? Here's what I would do. Multiply both sides by k, because what happens on the left side technically? Cancel, so 90k equals 360. How are you going to solve that? Divide by 90, right? And so yeah, is k 4? Yes. Okay, I think most of you knew that already, but and better put it in the correct color. And there you go. But that's only one equation that could have those 3 answers. There is another one that could have those exact same 3 answers. Any ideas? Nope, you don't have to multiply that. That would be another possible answer. What was said was distribute the 4. That would be an equivalent answer, yes. It would be the same. Not what I was looking for, though. The period is 90 degrees. We dealt with that down here. Because if there is a 4 here, it would turn the period into 90 degrees, with a 4 being there. Positive ending. If a negative 3 is out front, is the amplitude still 3? Yes, that's the only thing. Just watch out for that. Just make sure you have a positive and negative on that amplitude. And now we've got them. Nope, I will never mark it wrong if you feel like distributing that 4. But I think it's easier to write it this way first and then distribute it than trying to figure out what it is distributed before you do all the work. You know what I mean? The phase shift is just way easier to get it in the problem. Okay? Okay, so this one is determine the possible equations of sine. So again, equation means equal sign, and it better have a sign this time. So y equals sine. Take your time on that. Make sure you put the right trig in there. Right, that's important. I need the amplitude to be 2. Positive and negative 2. Very good. And then I just kind of go like this, and I try and figure out what goes where. I like theta, so I'll put theta in there. Let's see. Oh, I heard plus 90 degrees. I agree with that. Because the phase shift is a negative 90, so you do the opposite. Is it a 4 again? Are you sure? Yeah, because sine's normal period is 360. I have to divide that by k. Again, here's kind of where k is. And it better equal 90 when I'm done. I agree that is once again 4. Is it always going to be 4?
No.
No. Yeah, it could be, but probably not, right? Any questions on that?